at Lululemon. And also Sophika, I should check how to say last name here, Kostyniuk, and I apologize if that is incorrect. She's the senior corporate campaigner from Canopy Style. Sophika, I hope I said it right. And Patrick Geary is an assistant manager at Patagonia. But ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for our panel, who will be speaking on connecting textiles to nature. So welcome to all of you. So as with the last panel, I'm going to get you to introduce yourselves and tell me what a little bit about what it is you do and who you work for. And we shall turn to you first, Stacey. Tell us what you do with Lululemon.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us. This is really great to be here. So who I am, my name is Stacey. I have been working at Lululemon for 3 years and have been focusing on our supply chain. And what that means is really focusing on, at first it was really our vendor code of ethics and how we're engaging with our factories and improving the work that we're doing with the people that make the product. And then as time went on, I just started engaging more and more on the product side of things and started looking at, okay, well, how can we find a better product or a better material for this product? And so I started working on the responsible down standard. And as Lululemon is a quite young company in the scheme of things, I mean, we're not even 20 years old, and the sustainability department is only 4 years old. So it started right before I came on, and we began looking at, okay, well, we started with the social compliance and social compliance side of things and really looked at, okay, workers and all that. And then now we're starting to look a lot more into product and being innovative with our materials. And that's when certain elements around certifications and just upgrading those materials coming to light. So, so one of my first projects was the responsible down standard. And in the scheme of things, now that I've been working on our Canopy project, it was a relatively simple project. And I say that, well, I mean, working with a larger supply chain like ours, it was straightforward. It's down. We had one supplier. It was a very straightforward choice that we can make, and there was something out there. There was certification. There was something we could do, and it was awesome that we had that opportunity and really took that. And then as we've been moving into Canopy and our viscose supply chain, the supply chain is just a lot larger, and there's other supply chains that are even more complex than the viscose world. So this next project that we've been working on, and we're at the height of it right now, is really looking at our viscose tensile modal. It's all our materials that are made from forest fibers and regenerated cellulosics, if you know that technical term. And it's been incredible because I'll even thank Canopy for being here and doing all this amazing work, because they've really harnessed a lot of amazing brands from around the world to pull together a core group of people, a core group of brands to make an impact on the entire supply chain, not just like on one material, but really trying to elevate the work that's being done on forests, so we're not sourcing from ancient or endangered forests. So I think that, that's probably my biggest call out for right now, and I know we'll get into more questions and answers.
We certainly will. And Sophika, we'll turn to you, and maybe you can explain a little bit about what Canopy is and what you do.
Sure. I can go on at length. So thank you in advance for indulging me a little bit. I'm so delighted to be here. Thank you to Eco Fashion Week, to Fiona for hosting this panel. It's really, really wonderful to be sitting here, particularly with two of our 99 brand partners, Lululemon and Patagonia. So I'm Sophika Kostyniuk, Senior Corporate Campaigner at Canopy. I've spent the last 15 years of my working life on advocacy campaigns and conservation advocacy campaigns. So I've worked most prominently with the government of California, putting in place organics food labeling. I've worked on a national grassroots organization with the David Suzuki Foundation, growing a movement for environmental rights across the country, and also partnered with the City of Vancouver to strengthen their sustainability transportation plans. So what am I doing at Canopy? Well, before I dive into that, I was wondering if we could sort of get to know the clothes that are on our backs today. So maybe I'll give you a couple of seconds to try to locate a materials label.
Just don't have a wardrobe malfunction, okay, people?
There's lots to choose from in the aisles, but either on yourself or your neighbor, on a scarf, a jacket. See if you could find one. I know I have one.
I know I have one, but I'm wearing a skirt and sitting on a stage. So, Rimpy, what am I wearing?
So, if you found one, and you can continue looking later on and actually go through your closet at home, but if I could just see a show of hands, if there's a material, if there's viscose listed on that label, anyone with viscose? Okay, not unusual.
Do we have viscose?
Yeah, we have some viscose. Do we have modal? Okay, definitely. I bet you're wearing something soft and drapey and very, very luxurious. Not at all. Okay, tencel. Okay, phenomenal. These fabrics, all right, you get a prize. These fabrics are so prolific and growing so quickly on the global market. Stacey kind of alluded to it, but can anyone just shout out the fiber that produces these materials? Do you know where it comes from? Trees. You're so smart. Okay, this is an advanced audience. So yes, absolutely trees. That's where I spend my days, is actually helping support brands to put in place policies, helping them unravel their supply chains, their viscose supply chains, which is kind of the umbrella name for all of the trademark fabrics like tencel, modal, lyocell, and then looking for sustainable solutions, whether they be viscose, alternative fabrics, recycled fabrics, and so on. So Canopy, we've actually been around for quite a long time. It's our 17th year in existence, and we were founded right here in beautiful Vancouver. We started working out with traditional, very, very big forest product users, so the usual suspects. Newspapers, book publishers, magazines, and had some significant wins really early on. We partnered with, very fortunately, J.K. Rowling, and produced a 100% recycled version of a Harry Potter book. So that kind of landed us on the global stage and quickly propelled us to places we were dreaming about going. But about 5 or 6 years ago, a new piece of information came to us, one that we hadn't anticipated, was that millions of trees every year, and back then around 70 million trees a year globally were disappearing into clothing, which we thought was quite curious. And then we did some more digging, and some research showed us that around a third of those trees were actually being sourced from ancient and endangered forests. Now, this is what the heck's an ancient and endangered forest? The technical definition is really, it's a forest that's been made rare due to human activity, so logging, agriculture, mining. It's a forest that is naturally rare, so smaller landscapes and more of a unique forest type, and a forest that supports critical ecological biodiversity. And then we started thinking, that's actually unacceptable. There's got to be a better way to do this. We don't need to get our clothes, our t-shirts, our suit linings from ancient and endangered forests. So Canopy Style was born, And we focus our work on 3 primary geographies around the world. You're probably all familiar with the Amazon. We don't focus on the Amazon. There are some lots of incredible groups doing some really, really hard work there, and it's primarily beef, soy, lumber coming out of there. So we really focus on the coastal temperate rainforests, so the incredible rainforests in our backyard on Vancouver Island, those 1,000-year-old cedars that you can drive through, the groves in Avatar Grove when you're heading over to Tofino. The Great Bear Rainforest, which just last year received an incredible win where 85% of the landmass is now protected from logging, and it was a historical agreement. The First Nations governments, the provincial government, industry, and nonprofit groups all came to an agreement. So that's coastal temperate rainforest, then the boreal forest, which stretches across the top of Canada, the big green swath on maps, and then Indonesia. Northern Sumatra, a place called the Lucer ecosystem that Leonardo DiCaprio is currently making very famous. It's kind of the place of storybook legend. There's rhinoceros, tigers, elephants, and orangutans that still live there and coexist. So those are our primary geographies that we're focused on. We've grown very, very quickly on Canopy Style. It's our 4th year in existence, just like Stacey's program. So we've gone from 0 brands to now 99 partner brands that have policies in place where by the end of 2017, they will no longer be sourcing unsustainable viscose. So they will be going risk-free, which is incredible. In total, we combine the market power and we bring together over $115 billion in US dollars in terms of annual revenue, so significant market share. It's really allowing us to have a strong concerted voice and enact positive and quick change throughout the viscose supply chain. So who do we work with? Well, we work with some of the titans of the world, including Zara and H&M, who actually work with us on a leaders working group that helps set the agenda, a very aggressive agenda for the entire Canopy Style campaign. We work with innovators like Eileen Fisher, Stella McCartney. We work with Lululemon, Patagonia, all the way down to independent designers. And so we tailor our support to each one of those brands, and we work in a very collaborative fashion. And no money is exchanged between our hands and theirs, which really gives us a lot of flexibility to stay nimble and to stay really focused on the goal. So maybe if we could, we could see this little guy. Actually, this is a spirit bear that's up in the Great Bear Rainforest and now enjoys an area of protection due to that landmark agreement last year. But maybe we should look at what the viscose supply chain looks like. So if we could go to slide 2, and if we're not blocking the view too badly. As Stacey mentioned, some supply chains are clean and short and tight. Viscose is massive. It is global in every single regard. But the beauty of the viscose supply chain is that there's a really, really tight pinch point right at the viscose producer level. So that's these guys. And the top 10 viscose producers on the planet control 70 to 75% of all viscose available, which allows us, with our big market power, to speak very effectively and very efficiently to that place in the supply chain and engage in really, let's say, dynamic conversations and call for those supply chains to not source from ancient and endangered forests. So if we look at how do we get a tree into a piece of clothing, it actually starts at the forest floor. So viscose is a man-made cellulosic fiber. Cellulose typically comes from plant fiber, so you need a lot of trees. So a logging company will come in, often clear-cut forest, transport the logs to a pulp mill. This particular pulp mill is Toba Pulp Lestari in Indonesia, and they are enormous and notorious for reasons that we can get into in another conversation, but they're actually the viscose producers. So in order to get a tree into a long staple fiber for viscose, it's a very chemically intensive process of breaking down that fiber, and by the time this part of the production is finished, it's actually kind of a slurry, like a gummy product, the viscose that's produced. And you can use that viscose for components of unexpected things like computer screens, contact lenses, sausage casings, and clothes. Amazing, right? It's a very, very
Some clothes have been called sausage casings.
Yeah, there's a fusion going on, right? Yeah. We're very interested in the clothing. So from here, the viscose is actually transported to a viscose staple fiber factory, where that viscose, that sludgy compound, is then washed, spun, and dried. And by the time it's dried, it starts to look like a cotton ball and something that's far more recognizable. Then it gets spun, woven, dyed, cut, and eventually we end up with clothes. So it's quite interesting. But as I mentioned, Canopy has a relationship, or I will mention that Canopy has a relationship with 9 out of the top 10 viscose producers now, which is phenomenal because their policies are totally in line with our brand partners' policies. So they're speaking to the same goals, to the same vision, and that 2017 commitment. So we're seeing rapid change happening now that we're in 2017 and the market keeps growing, or our market share keeps growing. So you might be asking yourself, as an independent designer or a smaller brand, what could you possibly do to impact such a big global supply chain? Well, as it turns out, quite a bit. You have a lot of choices, and your voices matter. So the first step when you partner with Canopy is to sign the policy, which is basically our agreement with each other, that we're going to be working towards the end of 2017 for that deadline date, that you're going to be prioritizing alternative materials. You'll be looking at certified forest fiber if you're sourcing from fibers, and so on. Once that policy's in place, you can start communicating down your supply chains and asking those questions. Where's my fiber coming from? You know, who's the producer? And I would place a bet on the fact that the majority of your viscose will be coming from the top 10 because they're just so ubiquitous. They're everywhere. The other thing that you can do is start looking at, there's some incredible R&D going on right now, research and development in terms of alternative fibers. We have partnerships in place with 6 really, really innovative companies that are working on things like sustainable bamboo products for viscose, using agricultural waste products, so leftover straw, leftover flax, and turning that into sustainable and staple fiber. And also some very cool things that I'm just starting to learn about, even milk byproduct and pineapple waste, which there's a lot of that around, and turning that into fiber that's going to be ready and available for clothing very shortly. So maybe I'll leave it there for now. As I say, it's very easy, at least for me, to become super passionate about this because it's just kind of mind-boggling what's going on. But I'll probably put this pitch in a few times in the next hour, that we are at our 99th brand policy. We're looking to hit that 100th policy mark by mid-April. So if by the end of this collective conversation, when you hear a little bit more about what's going on and you're like, absolutely, I'm there already, I'm sourcing responsibly, I'm really interested in committing to this, we would love to welcome you into the Canopy Style family. Of course, as a campaigner, I have a template policy available on me that we can run through, but it's something that you'd have to be able to do with integrity and speed. So thank you very much. We'll pass it off.
Excellent. We'll move down the line to Patrick Geary. He's the assistant manager of Patagonia, a brand you're all familiar with. But Patrick, put it into your words. Patagonia, and what do you do with them?
Hey guys, so I work at the Patagonia West 4th store here in Vancouver. I've been there since not quite day one of when we opened 2.5 years ago, but day 3. And two big parts of my jobs are both hiring and training. I create and run all the training for our store. We have a pretty decentralized company in that way. And in our training, we always have 2 days. One is full of product, and the other is company culture and history. And the story we always kind of start out with takes its roots way back when our founder actually made climbing equipment rather than clothing. Because this story kind of encapsulates what we've done from then and how we've tackled a lot of the environmental issues. In the early 70s with climbing, not sure if we have any climbers in the audience here, probably a couple of the mech guys, but you used to climb a wall and protect yourself by jamming a piton, which is like a wide nail, into a crack in the wall. You would attach your rope to that, and that's how you don't fall off a mountain. At that time, climbing was pretty niche. It was pretty small, so you weren't seeing long-term or massive issues with this. As climbing became more popular, all of a sudden, our founder was seeing these gigantic, beautiful rock faces with piton scars in them, like irreparable damage done from pounding a nail in and taking it out every time. And he thought right away, there has to be a better way. We can't just sit by and keep making these things which are damaging the place where we play. So there he decided to design and market a solution to this by making the first passive protection. He paired this with a gigantic essay in the 1972 catalog for our company, which is the first of its kind for our brand, talking about clean climbing. And in that, they talked about how we can't just find the ends by any means. We can't get to the top of a climb if it's going to mean damaging this rock forever. And it was a huge financial risk. Pitons were our bread and butter. It's what he did. It's what he did the best. It's what he was well known across the world for these. And overnight, he had to make the decision to do this. And it paid off, thankfully, or else there would be no Patagonia today. And that experience for him was super empowering because all of a sudden, okay, I take a risk and the people responded. Now we can do that again. Fast forward 20 years, and we did this is now we're in the clothing industry and Patagonia has been created. We did a life cycle analysis of our 4 major fibers, nylon, polyester, wool, and cotton, trying to figure out which had the worst environmental footprint. Thinking, of course, nylon, polyester, petroleum chemicals, or petroleum products, they have to be the worst. But we found that cotton, due to the amount of pesticides being used and the high water content that it takes to actually make cotton products, it had a massive negative impact on the environments where it was grown. In addition to the fact that our Boston store employees were actually getting sick because we had a terrible ventilation system, and one of our suppliers actually applied like a formaldehyde film over their conventional cotton so that it wouldn't shrink and wrinkle. So again, the power of being a privately held company, as we still are, is the fact that they sat down for a board meeting and discussed the issues that could happen, and Yvon Chouinard was just, no, we're going to do this, and we're going to do it in 2 years. So they made the decision at that board meeting in 1994 that by the end of 1996, we would be in 100% organic cotton. Not that this didn't have a lot of challenges to it. At that time, the organic cotton industry was almost non-existent, so we had to go and find more suppliers. Our mills didn't want to deal with it because it was sticky because of the aphids, and there were stories of twigs getting in cotton, and just cost. Because at that time, organic cotton was something around 3 times the amount raw than conventional cotton. So we had to take a big hit there. And again, huge financial risk. Cotton at the time was 20% of our overall sales, which is a big risk to take, but one that he was willing to because at the end of the day, it's the right thing to do. So they did it, and they adjusted the margins, and yeah, we took a financial hit. We actually had to cut 1/3 of our cotton line that year. But at the end of the day, now we were at the time, and one of the leaders in the organic cotton industry. And then we helped more brands try and get onto it. Because at the end of the day, we realized that as a medium-sized company, we're definitely not big. We're not small, but we're not big. What we can do is we can come up with these solutions and then hopefully pass it on to the big guys. And it's by passing the technology onto the big guys where we're going to see the cost of those environmentally friendly products come down to the point where your margins are healthy enough that you're going to be able to run a sustainable, economical, and environmental business off of it. And that's something we're still working with today. A couple campaigns we have on now is our neoprene-free wetsuits. We are currently trying to find, or we just came out with a new run of our wetsuits. The first ones didn't go so well. But yeah, we just came out with the first neoprene-free wetsuit, which is great. It's actually made out of a natural rubber tree, Havea, which is grown in Sri Lanka. It's FSC certified, Rainforest Alliance is all on board with it, and we are a dot on the wetsuit market, but we are hoping other brands pick this up because the margins on our wetsuits don't look great, but again, it's the right thing to do. And I guess one of the more recent ones was working with Primaloft to make a recycled or 55% recycled version of Primaloft Gold, which is their most thermally efficient insulation that they make. This is going to have a great effect because now we're using 55% recycled polyester instead of virgin, and any company who buys Primaloft Gold now buys Primaloft Gold Eco because they don't have the option to go back. So the Arc'teryxes of the world, the North Faces, are now using this too.
Excellent, thank you. And I also just want to remind you that this is called Collective Conversations. So if at any time you have any questions for our panelists, just raise your hand and we'll come find you. And of course, the topic of this panel is connecting textiles to nature. You've heard our wonderful panelists speak to where they're from and what they do. And Stacey, I'll turn to you because of course we're talking about sustainability. I just learned everything there is to know about Canopy, and it's fascinating stuff. But maybe you can just bring it full circle, and where is Lululemon in the conversation as far as bringing textiles back to nature and connecting to the right choice, which we all know is always the expensive choice, but it's the right thing to do.
Well, I think this is where being a young company and a young department as well, where we're really trying to make the right choices and figure out what that really looks like. And we don't have a clear strategy in place yet. So I focus on traceability as my primary focus. And right now that really focuses on our natural materials because there's so much to be done there. And we're also working on the product innovation on the side of recycled materials, of course. And since we are highly synthetic, as Esther spoke about earlier, we need to focus on that. And with the natural side of things, we're looking at, okay, what are the better choices that we can make? And so whatever they are. So obviously it's like I said, responsible down standard, Canopy, and just where are we sourcing? Let's have some visibility. I think in the last session, we really got to see the challenge of visibility, of getting it, and then that there are some options. I mean, Okutex, I hope I said it correctly too.
There's no wrong way to say it today.
No wrong way, as the kids showed us, right? And we really get the opportunity to improve our visibility of our supply chain. And I mean, there's companies like H&M and Inditex. I mean, they're 10, 15, I don't even know, but they're a lot bigger than us. And so I really see it as an opportunity for us to take advantage of our size now and get as much clarity and visibility and start making those better choices so we can be a more powerful brand and really offer our consumers that the best choice possible.
And maybe you can speak a little bit, Patrick, because you talked about neoprene, but we keep mentioning the responsible down standard. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about what that is and how a consumer can make a better choice.
Yeah, so I actually started at Lululemon as a retail employee probably about 5 years ago now, and before making the switch to Patagonia. And I discovered that we've had the same down supplier forever before Lululemon actually made the switch. Downlight, I'm pretty sure they're the biggest down supplier in the world. And the way we got started on it was a good PETA video on one of our factories that wasn't doing so great in terms of their treatment of animals. And we made the switch then to decide to go to, we call it the traceable down standard, on where we can guarantee that our geese have never been live plucked, force fed, and that down has never been mixed with down that has. And again, it was the right decision for us, and I'm super happy to see Lululemon jump on board with that. I think It's, I think, I see it being harder for a company that's gone a long time and I don't see Lululemon as having that at their core from the start, the environmental side, and to bring that in is so difficult and such a great undertaking to do. Like, them bringing Esther on at a VP level speaks volumes of what they as a company are trying to accomplish. And I know the traceable down standard for us has been one of those things that we've held near and dear to our hearts, and we really hope other companies jump on board, and it's great seeing it happen.
And industry-wide, too. I mean, and I love hearing that from someone who spent so much time at Lulu as well. But the industry is evolving right now, and I mean, Esther was speaking to it earlier, but this world of collaboration is just so powerful. All these different standards are now like, oh, how do we work together? And how do we get one standard that really meets the needs and really represents like what consumers are looking for and what we as brands want to represent? And so it's really great to start seeing like the shift of like, okay, how do we do this together? Let's not try and do this in our own silos.
And Sophika, what is that like for you, whether it's the responsible down standard or from your perspective, Canopy, when brands do get on board and they do make the change? Because we've talked about it all day today that everybody from a consumer angle to the big companies want to make a change, but it's not always an easy one. But what is that like for you when companies do get on board?
Yeah, it's tremendously exciting, as I say, whether it's a single independent designer or a giant titan. Like we just had the parent company of North Face and Timberland and Lee sign on with us in February, so that was a $12 billion US corporation. So when there's corporate leadership on that front or brand leadership, it just opens the door for everyone else who's been waiting or hesitant or fearful or not sure how to approach the situation. It normalizes it, right? And it just offers up a lot more intelligence in terms of how corporations work, how brands work, decision-making trees, and it just gives us a lot more intelligence, being sort of the central axis of this huge wheel that's spinning. We absorb all that information and are able to support brands so much better because we keep learning. With every new edition, we keep learning. I was wondering if I could just very quickly touch on the fact when you were saying people want to do the right thing, but it always comes at an extra cost. I want to challenge that a little bit. It most of the time is like that, but the collective change that we're seeing in the industry is actually allowing for prices to come down. And for us at Canopy, working with the viscose supply chain, we don't want just one of the viscose suppliers to succeed and say, we're green lighted, we're sustainable, and now we have a corner on the market, so we're gonna jack up the price because then it's not.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the reality, and brands can't keep raising their prices, and it's not serving the big system to the fullest if you do that. So allowing as many of the producers, whether it be down or whatever it is, to rise up together, that's the trick.
And that's what we were talking about in the last panel. The larger voice is the best voice. So when you come together collectively to make those decisions, they're an easier decision to transition to. Yeah. And Stacey, let's turn to you because Esther was talking earlier about culture. What is it like at a company like Lululemon when you do make those transitions, you do come on board with the direction that you want to be going, you make it doable and you actually do it? Because everybody's got a vision, but getting there is the battle.
Yeah. I've been at a few other companies. I've been at the parent company of Phillips Van Heusen, or Calvin Klein, but the parent company's name is Phillips Van Heusen, and Columbia Sportswear. And it's a different experience. Lululemon, I see some people I've worked with on different projects in the audience, and what's amazing is individually, everyone's like, yes, okay, how do we make this happen? We want this. And then it's like, okay, well then what does that look like? And from a young company where we have so many different systems, it's more of the, how do we make it work within the confines of our structure? And that's where the challenges arise, but not challenges that can't be overseen. It's just more of like, okay, well, we need to figure out what the strategy is and then put the pieces in place. And leadership has been quite supportive, I think, to what you said earlier. It's just they've hired Esther at a VP level. There's more and more commitment by our senior level leadership into what sustainability is, what it looks like for Lululemon, and really taking that to the next level.
And from a consumer standpoint, what is it like for you, Patrick, when people, let's take the non-neoprene wetsuit, for example, when they know they've made a better choice, there wasn't one before, previously you couldn't do that, but what is it like when people make that purchase and you know that you've pleased a consumer that they can make the right purchasing decision?
There are so many options in the outdoor industry these days and in the clothing industry in general, and we all make our stuff in the same factories. We are all using pretty much the same technology in a lot of ways. And I find that people are trying to find that extra little bit beyond the performance. They're trying to find that story behind the product now, and they're trying to connect to a company on a cultural level that we maybe didn't see in the past. There was a lot of disconnect before. And I know when a customer enters our store, on the right-hand side is the first thing you see isn't about product. The first thing you see is about our local environmental story. And that kind of sets the tone for everybody walking in our door. And as employees, we are hired not just because of our ability to sell. We're actually not that great at that all the time. We're really hired a lot of time on our ability to tell the story of the product. And a big part of that is the environmental side. And being able to be a conscious consumer and make the switch just gives that person more power and gives them a sense of pride in their clothing. Because when you buy a product consciously, you're not just buying it because of the look, because of the performance. When you're buying it because of that environmental side, you have a knock-on effect of the fact that now this customer is going to look at this product and be, how can I take care of this? How can I make this last more than just a year and a half from now until I don't like it? How is this piece going to be that? And we have a couple people on our staff who have like parents from their clothing. How am I going to pass this on to my kids? Like we have a Cinchilla Snap Tee fleece, which I literally tell every customer, I'm like, don't go for the gray one. That's not a good idea, because what's going to look good in 20 years when your kid wants to steal it from you? And when you can instill that kind of pride in your clothing, which is such an odd thing to take pride in, people are going to actually make it last a lot longer, and they're going to end up using way less in the end too.
I just want to jump in on this. I just so appreciate that, and I have a husband who regularly tells me stories about buying or stealing his dad's Patagonia products, so I think it's really sweet. From Lululemon, I think one thing that we're really good at is educating on our product. It's something that you go in, if you have questions, like our what we call educators, they know the details on our product. And where one thing that I've been working on and our whole team has been working on is how do we get education on sustainability into that model? And with the Responsible Down standard, it was so much fun. I created this amazing one-pager with some other folks at Lulu around and passed it off to the stores. And every time I go into a store and I tell them who I am, and they're like, oh, what do you work on? What do you do? And over the last few months, it's been cold, so I've had my down jacket on, and they've pointed, and I was like, oh, well, the Responsible Down standard, and they get so excited. And so if the people that are working in our stores are excited about sharing our product and the good things that are going on, it makes us be like, okay, how do we do more of that? And I think it's the same thing. It's like from the educators and consumers. It's all the way down the line.
And Sophika, maybe you can speak to that from Canopy's standpoint when we're talking about people having a backstory, understanding the backstory, and I think at the end of the day that builds brand loyalty, which is what everybody's looking for. So what is it like for you when people actually make that connect, like you showed visually here, of the backstory of what viscose is and what you educate people about?
So our audience is, it's very behind the scenes. It's sustainability folks, like literally Stacey, and a couple others that I see in the crowd that we've worked with. It's connecting on values and storytelling, and that social justice piece, the environmental justice piece. That's what gets people excited, and that's what gets people fired up. And people in the sustainability movement, whether they're in corporations like these guys or activists, I mean, that's what really drives you and fuels you every day, right? Like I think it's undeniable that people would like to, if at all possible, have their actions contribute to a greater good. So just bringing it back to what the actual impacts are on, you know, the forest floor, on the planet, on the people that are, you know, at the very bottoms of these supply chains. It's very important to not forget those stories, and it's so easy to forget about that in the busyness of our everyday lives and, you know, kind of the world that we've created, particularly in urban centers, which is where almost all of us live. So connecting with corporate champions and seeing that light, that spark go off for them, and hearing, even if it's over the phone, just hearing the enthusiasm in their voice, you're like, got it, right? It's a relationship that's now started based on our shared value.
To add to that and to think about, I mean, I wasn't on board when we made our commitment. We were called Early Igniters, or are called Early Igniters. And I know, it's a cute name. And one thing that it just was a natural fit. Viscose is not huge at Lululemon, and we're in Vancouver. We're born in a rainforest. It's very much like, okay, we're here. Once you hear about this, when like Sophika started talking, pretty sure all of you are like, yeah, we got to do something on this. And so it was a very easy step for us to take in the commitment.
And I think perhaps easier being on the West Coast here and recognizing the Great Bear Rainforest, or having been to Tofino or Ucluelet and seen those giant trees, it's probably an easier connect. But Sophika, over to you again. What is it like when the larger big brands, because people might think Patagonia and Lululemon are big brands, they are, but the huge brands make that step? Because as we've been talking about all day, once those steps are made, it makes it easier for the young entrepreneurs to get to where they want to be in this sphere as well. So what are those moments like for you when the big ones come on board?
We celebrate. we high five around the office, and then we get to work blasting that out to the world. Because as I said, it's normalizing the issue. It's raising awareness, and it's opening those doors. So having a giant like a Zara take this on and actually invest a significant amount of staff time, commitment, travel, you know, just smarts to these issues, it's huge. It helps in so many ways, right? It increases the market power that we have, so then we can speak down through the supply chain. We can go and travel to China and bring one of their reps with us to actually meet with viscose producers, for example, and speak to the chemical producers. It's kind of all, you know, alters our universe in a very good way every time something like that happens.
And
Go ahead.
so I have a lot of comments.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah, it's good. So in October, I went to New York. Canopy had a summit, and what was incredible about it is Zara, H&M, like all the big brands, bigger than us, were there, and some smaller ones too. And this is where the collaboration piece comes back to, because it's like, how do we work together? We're not in this alone, and we can do this. So it really takes, I mean, Canopy is such an amazing support. So as we're going through, as I'm like, oh, I found this new supplier, like, where did they stand? I get the information from Canopy, but I can also go to this network of people who are like, okay, yeah, how are you handling this? What are you doing? There's a community involved, which just goes back to, we're not in this alone.
And Patrick, back to Patagonia, because much like MEC, being an outdoor company, has kind of had this part of your dialogue a little bit longer than most, I would assume, or maybe I'm wrong, but how do you refresh that story so people don't think that, you know, Patagonia, oh, but you guys keeping on top of it so people recognize you and celebrate the history.
How do you stay hip and cool? And I think the end of the last, how do you keep it sexy?
Keeping it sexy, that's what we're coming back to.
Yeah.
Well, it's true though, right? Because consumers need to be reminded sometimes of the long-standing companies because there's so many out there.
Yeah, there's so much choice. And storytelling is such a massive part of any brand that's successful, I think. I always say that we're really good at product. We're probably not quite the best at all our products, for sure. We're really good at community, but I imagine there's some good brands, but we are really so damn good at storytelling at Patagonia. For example, one of this is part of what we call our business library. We have 3 books that our founder has helped write.
It's how he introduced himself to me. He gave me this book, which is fantastic, but that's telling the story of the company, and I want to know about it.
And the other book that is kind of the gateway drug to Patagonia that a lot of, has anyone here read Let My People Go Surfing? Yeah, okay. It's a book about the history of our company and where we've been, and we just updated it this year with 10 more years of where we're going. And keeping that fresh and keeping that storytelling going is super important, to the point where you can't find it in Indigo a lot of the time because they keep selling out. We just don't print enough because apparently we don't.
You're environmentally conscious.
Yes. And then it's really diversifying in what you do as well. So don't stay in your box. You don't have to stay in your little happy little box. We have some core values of our company, and one is not bound by convention. We started as a gear company. We are now a clothing company. The gear company we used to be is actually now Black Diamond. Fun little fact. But now, a few years ago, our founder's like, you know what? Why don't we try food? And so now we're actually going into food and sustainable and regenerative agriculture. And we just launched a beer this year with Hopworks Urban Brewery in Portland. Yeah.
Doesn't Lululemon have a beer, or is that just a Seaweeds thing?
Seaweeds and Lululemon, yes.
Yeah, so we keep constantly updating what we're doing, and I think it's a real big investment in being on the forefront of what is next that really helps it kind of keep fresh and sexy, and not just being like, oh, they have another recycled polyester thing. And trying to close that loop is super important. But just don't be bound by convention, don't stay in your box, and I see questions.
Yeah, I was wondering, could you speak a little bit about the recent corporate activism, I guess, at the outdoor retailer show in Utah?
Oh.
Because that,
Yes.
to me, is outstanding, right? It's risky.
So with the recent changes in the states in politics, public lands...
What?
I'm sure some of you have heard. Public lands are under threat. The states has a very big tradition of states' rights versus federal rights. And that comes from their history of anti-colonialism. And that's fine, that's their history. And there's some really good value in that. But what's happening is states are wanting to take the land back from the federal government. And that puts it at greater risk of being exploited by mining, forestry, and a whole whackload of just terrible things that could degrade some of the most beautiful places in North America. So one of the worst places for this is actually Utah. Jason Chaffetz is the representative, I think he's the senatorial representative for Utah. He is a big, he's a big states-owned public land advocate. In the outdoor industry, there are 2 big shows every year. Both are called Outdoor Retailer, the summer show and the winter show. This is the biggest, the European one's really big. Yeah, they're big. Like every brand goes to this trade show. It contributes, $80 million to the local economy over a weekend. Don't quote me on that number, but we basically...
It's the largest out there.
Yeah, and we said that if the trade show was going to stay there, we aren't going to participate this year because we don't want to support an economy that is not going to support, it's not supporting our business. To be a matter of fact, it's wanting to take the public lands and exploit them for corporate use. And we decided that we need to move the trade show. And we are one of the biggest people. We spend a few $100,000 on our booth every year. And we said we will not participate in the next couple shows. OR is now planning on moving their shows. A couple other brands got on board with us for this. Cool Pants, not Adidas. I think Arc'teryx hopped on board quickly after. I think they were about a week after. And it forced the show to say they were moving after the contract's up. That's next year, and we're super happy that they're doing that. And we will go somewhere that is going to be more supportive of the outdoor industry and public lands.
Back to collectively having a voice that's a louder one, for sure.
Yeah.
Now, just before we get to questions, because we have a lot of entrepreneurs in the room, Sophika, you first. Advice to young entrepreneurs in the fashion business that you care to give us.
I mean, pursue your passion. It has to be your passion project. And when you figure out what your passion project is, which you probably already have, do it with as much integrity as possible. Don't be scared to take risks. Don't be afraid to voice your concerns, to ask the questions. If you don't start the dialogue with, your consumers, with the supply chain, it's not going to change anything. It'll be the status quo. And I just don't think that we can stay in a place where status quo is all right anymore. We really have to push the boundaries. So I would encourage you to do that.
And Stacey, same question for you.
Oh, she said it so well. I think it's really like, okay, I'll take a different route. I'd say be very clear on who you're working with, like in this realm of what we're talking about. Be clear on who you're working with and get as much clarity as you can. Keep asking questions. Don't take no for an answer. And because they know, or they can find out who is supplying to them or what they're working on. So I say, in the realm of what the topic is about, really focus on like asking questions, getting clarity, getting visibility. It will pay off in the long run if you become the size of Lululemon, as Lululemon's a great example here in Vancouver. You want to have as much clarity from the start and systems to trace it.
Absolutely, Patrick.
Coming from a store level, I would say be very careful with the people that you hire. We started as a brand, as a group of friends, and we just would hire on friends, we would hire on family, because they're the people who are going to understand and buy into your message the most. They're the people who are going to take what you say and they're going to run with it, and they're not going to question it. A part of our story is we never had an environmental organization or environmental department at the start of our company, is because we hired people who would build that into their roles automatically. So the amount of time that you spend hiring your people, they're the greatest investment you'll ever make. They will be the people who are going to probably make or break your company at the end of the day. So just hire your friends, hire the people who are going to take your message and really speak to it with a lot of passion and with a lot of fire.
Well said.
Great advice. Okay, time for you guys. Who has some questions? I know we've got a microphone. Just go to one because I can't see.
Hi. Thanks so much for sharing with us, you guys. It's great. I'm just curious. I know Patagonia has released new research on microfibers being discharged when we wash our garments. So unfortunately, we know that the pollution doesn't end at production. We continue to pollute. And I'm just curious about what you see the future of Patagonia looking at, and even Lululemon, any synthetic-based outdoor gear that we use regularly. How do you see the industries changing to adapt to this new research that we have now?
Oh man, yeah, microplastics is a real kick in the pants. I'm not gonna lie.
Literally.
We make a lot of fleece, and to find out that it's having that kind of impact was really devastating to a lot of the people in our company. All that we can say is that we're doing a lot of research. Like, we have partnered with, I think it's either UC Santa Barbara, or we're doing a couple different studies right now. One is out of University of South Carolina. I think that one is actually the people who are doing the microplastics issue. And what we found is cheaply made fiber or cheaply made fleece discharges a ton more microplastic fibers. So it's kind of just a backup again, where we say, buy something that's gonna last a long time because it's gonna be more environmentally friendly. I don't see us ever getting out of fleece. Right now, in the next couple of weeks, we're supposed to be getting these bags in stores that you can actually put your fleece in before you put it in the wash, so that it catches that. We actually had one of our employees out of our Denver store who just launched something on Kickstarter, she helped launch something on Kickstarter called the Cora Ball, which is supposed to go in with your washing stuff. So it's, right now, we're kind of in the harm reduction period, and trying to find a way that we can actually make our products so they don't discharge as much microplastics. And that's working with our vendors, that's working with raw materials, that's seeing how we can make recycled products higher quality so that they don't. We don't have the answer yet. We're looking for it. Hopefully we'll find it.
Okay, next question.
I've been in this industry for like 10 years with eco-friendly clothing. I used to own a boutique in Alberta, Edmonton, holding it down for the eco-fashion over there. So I've seen a lot of brands come and go, and I've seen a lot of things go up and down. I've seen a lot of eco sections in stores, and then I've seen them disappear. Is there one brand right now that you would find is like the poster child for not just eco-fashion, and I think I'm going to use the word that the other lady over there before was asking if there was like an umbrella term for everything. I like to use the word thoughtful apparel, because there's an intention, but you can't call it intentional apparel because that sounds cheesy. So we're going to use the word like thoughtful apparel. So is there like a poster child brand? Because I don't even know the answer after 10 years of like just this amazing brand that's hitting on all points or as many points as possible right now. Just because like we're talking with some small, medium-sized businesses, is there like a big business that just like melts your guys' hearts and like is like we need to be more like that?
Patagonia and Lululemon. Kidding.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
I felt that.
You know, I feel like every brand needs to focus on like the particular things. They need to be strategic, and I think it goes back to also this collective work. It's not one brand winning the race. It's really about like all brands winning this race. So how do we do it together? And I mean, to answer your question, there's not like one brand that's like hitting it out of the ballpark. Patagonia is doing this amazingly, and I mean, constantly learning, constantly engaging, and constantly working to improve. And so I think it's also, let's support companies that are communicating and really working to make that change, because you want to see, it's just like we expect of our factories, actually. We require, like factories, if there's an issue there, okay, they have an issue. What are they doing to fix the issue and prevent it from happening again? We have things called corrective and preventative action plans. And if there's an issue in a factory, I mean, if it's egregious and it just doesn't work to work with them, we're not going to. But if they have an issue and they're willing to fix it and engage, we want to support that. We want to work with partners that are going to, like, if they find out something that doesn't work with them, okay, great, and let's address it. So I say let's continue supporting like the brands that are actually out there communicating what they're doing and making the changes that need to be made.
I don't have an answer, but way to hold it down in oil country, man.
Yeah, good call.
Good point. Okay, next question. We've got one right here.
I just wanted to ask Patrick what specifically Patagonia is doing to close the loop, or to try and close the loop.
With synthetics?
Just in general, any practices to sustain the
Yeah,
clothing or recycle program?
Yeah, we're always, in terms of our recycle program, we launched something a while ago called Common Threads, which basically says that all of our products can now be repurposed in some way, shape, or form, down to the trims. So that's one big thing we've worked on. It's not always ideal because obviously as you recycle fibers, they degrade in quality. So some of it just goes to like padding underneath your carpet. But yeah, we are trying to close the loop, especially on our fleeces. We've actually had some success with closing the loop and having closed loop polyesters. And now we've actually just worked with Gore-Tex in creating a recycled nylon shell fabric that is going to be going on our Gore-Tex Pro products next season. So while it's not closing the loop, it's adding one more joint, which for nylon is a really big deal. We're working with our vendors. It hasn't happened yet, but yeah.
Everybody's working towards the same goal, I guess, is the answer. And any more questions?
Hi, my questions are regarding for Canopy and viscose, rayon, tencel. Like, I don't know a whole lot about those materials because I've always worked in menswear and technical outerwear. So, is tencel more environmentally friendly because that's sort of their mandate? Yet, then there's this the Canopy issue. So how do we know, is tencel better than viscose or rayon or whatnot?
Fantastic question, right? And so the viscose producers, and actually Tencel is a trademark product of one of the absolute biggest called Lenzing, and they're an Austrian company. They're the longest standing viscose producer. They are gigantic. They, along with Birla, which is an Indian viscose producer, control around 35% of the global marketplace, and they both have very aggressive growth plans. So They're super savvy, lensing in particular. Tencel is, they say that it's a closed loop system in terms of their chemical processing. So in that regard, it is a step above. There is always room for improvement. Where we are right now, we do have a policy in place with lensing. So they're working with Canopy. They're working on an audit, the first ever audit with Rainforest Alliance, which you were mentioning. And it's a certification company. It's that little green frog that you might recognize from certain fair trade and forest certifications. So their lensing is working now with Rainforest Alliance to actually understand where their fiber is coming from. And they don't actually have a handle on it because they're so huge, so it's not unexpected that they don't. But coming up in May, it'll be the first ever time that these audits will be completed for viscose producers. And so for our brand partners, they will get that have access to that information where transparency will finally start coming up through the supply chain. With lensing, we're saying at present they are sort of leaders in the viscose world. There is definitely more work to do. They're not green lighted yet. They're in the forefront as well because they're leading on the audit process. But we look at them as a whole system, a whole company. So because one product line is a little bit cleaner, let's say, it's still not risk-free. So we still want them to do more. It's a great question. Yeah.
Okay, we've got a question in the front row here. Miriam. No, I'm kidding.
So again for Sophika, so Tencel is made from trees. What about reforestation programs?
So plantations?
Yeah.
Okay. So Tencel originally was made almost entirely from eucalyptus on plantations. And because of the great popularity and attractiveness of that fiber, so it's soft, it's draping, it's very nice to the touch, there's not enough eucalyptus out there. So what's happening a lot of the time is actually land is being cleared in order to plant plantations. And there's a lot of processing involved in it as well. And there are new fibers being introduced. So it's not just pure eucalyptus anymore. So it's getting more complicated as the product becomes more and more popular.
Okay, we have time for one more question. Is there one more question? Bueller? Anyone? One more right here.
I just wondered if you could quickly explain, this is for Canopy too, if the difference between modal and Tencel? Yeah, just for people that...
So I'm not a chemist, but basically all these trademark viscose products have their own special sauce, right? And that's highly proprietary. We will probably never have access to that information, nor do we necessarily need it. But the chemicals that are involved in producing each one of those trademark fibers is very specific to producing the end product. So I don't actually know what that special ingredient is. I might be looking at a few Lululemon people in the crowd that might have additional information, but I don't know. Yeah.
Okay, I'm much like one more. Okay, one more question.
Hi. I was wondering, so in terms of textile recycling or just thinking about the end of the fibers or the clothes that are happening, a lot of the conversations that are happening with consumers is they're starting to ask where the clothes go to. I'm wondering, from your perspective as working B2B or B2C, how do you deal with that conversation of where the fibers or the clothes go to? And also how, if at all, or do you take stake in those conversations or even technologies to close that gap that we have?
I can start that. Someone down here, Robin, has done an amazing job from we have a whole take it back program, and we recycle 98% of products that are taken back, whether there's an issue with them or whatever the scenario is. And we work with a local company called D-Brand to do that, which that answers that question. And then we're working on the life cycle piece of it and really thinking about like, okay, how do we put that product back in? Because right now that's just repurposed into insulation and kind of a little bit what Patrick was saying. And so it's not the ideal scenario, and it's where the industry's at right now. So more to come, but we're working on it.
Okay, well, I wanted to say thank you to our panelists today, and a big round of applause for all of them for taking the time. Stacey, Sophika, and Patrick, thank you so much for all your great insight. And thank you all for being here for this panel. There's one more panel coming up, and it will be led by the one and only Miriam LaRoche. So you will not want to go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. It's been my pleasure to be your moderator, and some of you joined late. They're like, who's she? I'm Fiona from Shaw TV. So thank you so much for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you.